What's happening, everybody? And thanks for tuning in to the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Today's guest is Ewan Mackenzie of UK's own Pigs Times 7, or PigsPigsPigsPigsPigsPigs. I believe that's 7. Ewan and I get into everything from some ripping UK rock drummers, the stoner rock scene of England and Europe, touring the States, music from dark places, and a whole lot more. U.S. tour starts February 18th and kicks off in Los Angeles, California, so be on the lookout for them. Today's episode is sponsored by OneUpLoops.com. Drummer Carson Gain and his team spend an incredible amount of time recording over 450,000 shaker, tambourine, and hi-hat loops at every possible tempo in multiple fields with incredible mics and outboard gear for you to pick and choose. It's organized for you to find exactly what you need with just a few clicks, and everything feels and sounds incredible. You can sign up for free to check it out and gain full access to all 450,000 loops starting at just $6 a month. No download limits, whatever you want, whenever you want. New loops, one-shots, and drum breaks are being added weekly. Definitely a great addition to the arsenal of any drummer and or producer, and I can vouch for it myself, having used it. Check it out at oneuploops.com. Crash Bang Boom Podcast can be found where all podcasts are found, including Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and more. If you like what you hear, please check out any of the previous 280-plus episodes, and you can give me a like and or a subscription or even a positive review, as I would appreciate it. All right, here we go. Let's do it. Ewan Mackenzie, Pigs Times 7. Crash, bang, boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yes! Ewan Mackenzie of Pigs, 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 Pigs. That should be 7. Pigs Times 7. What's up, man?
Wow, that was impressive. You did that superbly, Jody. Hats off to you, man.
Thanks, dude. How are you doing? Is it cold there? It's just a shitty, rainy, miserable day here in Georgia. You're 5 hours ahead of me. You look like you still have some natural sunlight there.
Some natural sunlight. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, wow, the winters here are so dark. We're quite far up in, I guess, in latitude terms, a lot higher than you are. But we have the Gulf Stream, which is this weird sort of Atlantic piece of warm air that comes in and heats us up, but it's really dark.
Wow. There being Scotland? You're in England?
I'm in England now, yes, it's Newcastle, but it's very close to the Scottish border. It's only about, like an hour south?
Okay.
So very close to like Edinburgh and stuff. So it's like one of the most northerly, in fact, probably the most northerly English city that you can find.
Gotcha. Crazy, man. Yeah. Have you toured in the States before with the band?
Yeah, well, we were there last year. 2023, we did a month in March.
Nice.
So, I mean, I think we've avoided the South so far, but that's something that we have on our, to-do list.
Right.
If it makes sense. But we went to the Northeast. We went out west, up the coast as well. And we've been to Austin a few times. So we were at South by Southwest in March. And then we went back in October again. The October stint was really just around Austin in the Northeast. But in March 23, we did pretty much both coasts and Austin in the middle, and it was great.
Nice. Yeah, there's a chain of stores. I don't know if it's really around anymore, but it's called Piggly Wiggly. Did you by any chance see any Piggly Wigglies when you were down here?
Oh, I need to find this place. I didn't even know it existed.
I know.
Wow.
I was like, you got to, if you see one, I feel like you have to buy a T-shirt just to have it for the tour. It'd be a fun tour thing happening there.
And what did he sell?
It's just like a grocery store. I think it's predominantly in at least it was mostly in the South. So It's kind of funny, I mean, every time when I think of like your band name in my mind, I hear like some Southern rednecks being like, Piggly Wiggly, Piggly Wiggly, Piggly Wiggly, doing it maybe 7 times. I don't know if they've got the patience to do that, but.
Well, I'll be down with checking that out and seeing what kind of stuff they've got. It sounds fascinating. And if you've got any T-shirts, I'm down with that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a red shirt. It's got a little pig on it. It says Piggly Wiggly on it. They have their own line of merch and everything.
Cool.
When the band was first starting out, I was kind of mentioning it to you earlier. I hear the sort of stoner bluesy side of what y'all do. But there's a bit of psychedelia and some other kind of noise rock things happening as well, which I dig. But other than maybe like Orange Goblin, who I know is kind of a stoner band from England, is there much of a scene in England for stoner rock necessarily?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, we've got the fathers of heavy metal from Birmingham, Black Sabbath.
Totally.
It's obviously not part of the scene anymore, but obviously that heritage is fairly influential. We've had like loads of bands in the UK doing that kind of material over the years. Favorites might include bands like Iron Monkey. These days we have the Slamatics. I don't know if you know them from
No.
uh, Northern Ireland, from Belfast. They're a great band. Check them out.
Nice.
And all sorts of different stuff. But I think a lot of it is, sort of at the underground level, but there's loads of bands out there doing really interesting stuff that's kind of a bit more extreme, a bit more heavy. So yeah, loads of stuff.
Interesting. Is there any area in or town or city or scene, quote unquote, in England that sort of caters to that? Like that often seems to be how that happens. If you're sort of an isolated club doing something where maybe there's not that much demand, it always helps to sort of stick together and have a little enclave.
It probably used to be like Leeds and around Yorkshire. I don't know if it's necessarily like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But that was very much a sort of center of like DIY music. And there's bands like, I guess, like Pale Horse, lots of different kind of, not necessarily stoner rock bands, but kind of heavy experimental bands. Do you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean?
Yeah.
Who'd be like it'd be a lot of like noise gigs, a lot of sort of more bluesy rock stuff, a lot of doom, that
Gotcha.
kind of thing. And also, like London's obviously had a lot of that going on over the while. We played at a venue in London quite a lot called the Windmill, which I think still does, important gigs for that kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Heart in London as well is another really good venue. And of course, there's a Desert Fest festival in London
Right.
that's been going on for a bunch of years, and we've been lucky enough to play that a few times. But I guess that's sort of more of an international
Mm-hmm.
focus,
Right.
because we're actually playing the Berlin version of that in May. And that's the second time we've done that. So really looking forward to that show as well.
Nice. Yeah, I did a little bit of touring through Germany and played a few towns there with a kind of stoner rock band. Interestingly enough, quite some time ago. I think it was like 2007, so it was quite a while back. But I was impressed with the way that the Germans really seemed to embrace and love like loud rock and sort of heavy stoner rock, all that stuff. Everything rock, pretty much.
Yeah.
It really seemed to be. I was like, wow, they are really into it. It was awesome coming from the States and being like, this. I was like, this is amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, Europe in general is a great part of the world to be touring.
Yeah.
A lot of the infrastructure is really good, like there's
Right.
more sort of public municipality support for the arts.
Right.
So sometimes you find yourself in a venue, for example, like Vera in Groningen in the Netherlands, where you have like lots of people from the local community are helping out, and there's like boarding with the venue, and you would actually sort of sleep in the venue and things like that. And sometimes there's food as well,
Yeah.
rather than the sort of more, I mean, I guess commercial side, it's sort of more part of the way that they sort of use their taxation and distribute the wealth in these countries, which is really good. Good
Right.
way to go.
What was your impression of touring the States in contrast?
Touring the States was cool. I mean, like I think we had a great time. The thing I remember most about it is the distance between
Of course.
the cities, obviously. No, but we were treated very well in the States, and I think it was a new experience for us. We'd never been there before
Yeah.
as a band, and so we weren't sure how we would go down there.
Yeah.
But it was great. The response was incredible,
Awesome.
and we were like playing like sold out shows, being there for the first time, and we were like, it felt, quite close to home in a lot of ways, quite close to the way the UK operates, um, in terms of like organizing the gigs and stuff. But obviously the cities are really far apart.
Right.
We did a really good KEXP session in Seattle one day after having played Portland, I think the day
Mm-hmm.
before.
Yep.
And we were going to be doing a gig that night as well in Seattle. So yeah, we quickly tired, because we're not the youngest pups in the world, So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's what I remember about it is the big trips, but some fantastic, really good gigs as well.
Nice, man. Well, tell me a little bit about the band, and then we can kind of get into your departure and then ultimate return and maybe what you did in that interim there. But when did the band start, and sort of how did you get into the mix with all that?
Band started like 2012, so that would be nearly 12 years ago now. God.
Yeah.
Um, and So three of the members, Matty, who's the vocalist, Johnny, who's the bassist, and Sam, who is the guitarist, they went to school together. And they've been in various bands over the years. Since I think since they were teenagers, really. So they're quite close knit, but they moved to Newcastle and they sort of have always wanted to do music and be in bands and things. And Newcastle's a bit like it's quite a small city. The scene is quite sort of supportive, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So everyone kind of helps each other out. It's not just musicians, but we got artists here as well, and we got like, you know, cool thinkers and cool doers. There's some really good institutions in Newcastle, like the Star and Shadow Cinema, for example, which is volunteer run.
Mm-hmm.
Really good gigs there as well. So there's this kind of network of people, and through, various local events and weird underground gigs, you end up meeting the same people.
Right.
And that's how I met these guys, and that's how Adam joined them as well. So Adam Sykes, he's from the area, a bit north of Newcastle.
Gotcha.
So he hooked up with them, and he was the fourth member, and then I joined them, and I was the last member to join. And they came across me because I do a solo project called Dextro, which is electronic music,
Okay.
kind of droning electronic music. And I think they came to one of my gigs and decided that it might be an idea to have me along for one of the practices. And it just really clicked the first time we played together. It really worked.
Nice.
And it was like that, ever since, obviously, barring the break or whatever.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned the electronic project that you were doing, what was the means of playing that live? Were you playing instruments, or was it just synth based with backing drums, or how did that work?
Well, I'd sort of mix stuff and have like playing synths, guitar as well,
Okay.
and occasionally I would go into the kit, and that'd be the sort of more driven parts, the sort of more rocky parts, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I kind of mix it up a little bit in terms of the instrumentation. I think as in electronic music, you always feel a bit confused about what to do live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or insecure. I don't know what the right word is.
Sure.
But because I use a lot of live instrumentation in the recordings, I wanted to do that live. So yeah.
Nice. The period where you left the band, I guess that was about 5 years or so, I want to say. What did you
Yeah,
have?
something like that.
What did you have going on in that break there, so to speak?
So a lot of stuff. Basically, life was hectic at that point. Young kids, and also I'm an academic as well, which I don't normally cross the streams, but here we have.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's part of my life too. And that was very busy, and I just had to bow out for a while. Basically, it was just getting too much. But I obviously really missed it, and I was keen to get back.
Yeah.
And they phoned me up one New Year's Eve between, it would have been 21, 22, which was nice. I think Adam called me on New Year's Eve. So I sat in it for a little while. One answer to that question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because my life has changed in that period. It's become more open again, and I do have a problem with overcommitment, but
Yeah.
I think now I'm fully committed, and it's good in terms of like all the things I'm doing at the moment. So
Nice. In that break, did you find that you played much, or did you kind of also even take a break from even playing, so to speak, or practicing?
yeah, I've always played. I mean, I think drumming is something that I come to as a sort of form of therapy, if that makes
Of
sense.
course.
I didn't start off doing it imagining that I was going to be in a big band playing on stages and stuff like that. Although obviously as a young kid, you look at that and you're like, wow, look at that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Really, what I was interested in was just being able to do stuff with it. And I always felt really good and confident when I was behind a kit. It made me feel really good.
Absolutely.
And that hasn't really changed. So there's few areas of my life where I'll just sit down and go, all right, okay, I know what I'm doing here. I feel really confident about it. And that's one of them.
Yeah.
And I think like I've always wanted to try and get better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you ever stop learning. But
Yeah, for
I
sure.
still got so much to learn,
I know.
So I'm always inspired by drummers that are, quite technical, but also like I think you can get too technical in some contexts.
Sure.
So I'm always into the idea of like bringing in more groove than technical aspects if needed. Do you know what I mean? So
Sure.
I like the sort of musicality of it as well, and I treat it like a musical instrument rather than a beat maker, if that makes sense.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, man. I mean, you mentioned Black Sabbath earlier. I loved Bill Ward's playing some of the early video around those first 2-3 records of him playing live. It was such great bombast, swing, groove, everything about it. I just love that guy's playing. And as well, I mean, Deep Purple, they put out In Rock in 70, the same year that Black Sabbath put out their first record. So it's two monumentally heavy records that came out in 1970 between those two. And of course, Ian Pace, an incredible drummer
yeah.
that totally has the groove, hella chops, can rip solos out his ass. And then another guy that I love who would play like if 6 years later in 76 with the Rainbow Rising record is Cozy Powell, another English drummer who one of my all-time favorites. So I've got like those three. And of course, I mean, good God, throw in John Bonham at any moment. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, well, these four people, I mean, Bill Ward, I think what's interesting about Bill Ward, I think I always go back to the Live in Paris video.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see him sort of, I guess, I mean, I hate to say this, but probably at his prime, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of mixture of rock drumming, but also like jazz and like really sort of off time fills, and the way that he's sort of like just absolutely battering them
Yes.
with both of these kind of styles in mind. It's incredible.
Uh-huh.
And it's also about when he stops playing and he's sort of leaving the gaps, and,
Totally.
all of that comes into it. And I think with Deep Purple with Ian, it's like, I don't know if you know the Child in Time video
Yes.
live at the BBC.
Yes.
That's class. Yeah.
Yes.
I watch that regularly as well. And
Same here.
even the way he's just using like the cymbals, it's like he's just, class act. So
Yeah, man.
and he also makes it look easy.
Yes, he does.
Chill as hell. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing my thing.
Right.
And I don't think he fully realizes that thing is absolutely awesome. It's kind of
Absolutely it is. And playing with just a fucking wall of sound. Deep Purple was notorious for being loud as hell. I mean, even the keys player was playing through Marshall stacks. There was just Marshall stacks and amps and just full raw loud ass power. I'm such a fan of Deep Purple.
No, it's great. Really, just really good musicians,
Totally.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, man. So you, at some point, you get back in the band. You had sort of mentioned getting the call and getting back in the band. Did you feel as though that was a pretty natural thing, just getting back and playing with the guys? It was sort of just like revisiting a house that you once lived in, so to speak?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it changed a bit because obviously when we started out, we sort of had this thing where we would just write songs on the back of a toilet paper. And what I mean by that is it would never finish.
Right.
So we would do like half an hour set without stopping.
Okay.
And then the next piece of music would be the end of that bit, and then on, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, we thought, if we ever sit down, we'll be able to play our whole back catalogue without stopping.
Right.
So the first album that we did was essentially a track like that, and then one short song, because we needed something that was a bit more of a, like a sort of bite-sized chunk, if that makes sense. And so it was shortly after that I left. So when I came back, they were fully integrated into the shorter tracks and working on that basis.
Yep.
But that was cool, and I think like it was obviously after COVID as well. So there was not just about me being out of the band, but I think, everybody being quite disparate as people as well as a fact of the pandemic. So that was an aspect. So it was more like we just all came together. And there was a really good energy about that. And we went away to Wales, 400 miles from here, down in a lovely part of the United Kingdom. It's quite mountainous and lots of countryside. And we did that we just boarded for a week in the studio and just spent all our time like working on the ideas that we had. And it was great. It was an absolute pleasure. So hopefully it's going to be like that the next time too.
Yeah. And the record that you're referencing there, Land of Sleeper, the last one y'all put out in 2023, right?
Yeah, that's it, on Rocket Recordings, yeah. I think it's through Missing Piece in the States.
Gotcha. It's awesome that y'all stayed there. It sounds like you retreated to the country. I always love that kind of ambiance when you can have it to be able to go out and separate yourself from the city and just focus on playing and everything else.
Yeah, it's a total privilege.
Did y'all record it live in a room, or did you do the sort of more modern take where it's like drum tracks, bass, guitar, vocals, etc.?
For this one, I think we always play together anyway when we're recording it, but we might have isolated the instruments. I think we probably isolated the drums actually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean we've done different types of recordings. We obviously have the live LP that's out recorded in New York recently as well. And that was all just, off the desk at the gig. So, but I think for the album, yeah, we did do that. Um, and I guess we didn't have a lot of time to play the songs out in the real world before we did that recording.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways they've kind of morphed and changed a little bit in good ways.
Sure.
And we have the live representation of them as well. But I like both. I like the recorded one and the live one. They're just slightly different because they've got like little nuances and things.
Yeah, man. So early on, man, tell me maybe about some early gigs and just sort of getting the band off of the ground, which I've done before. And I mean, I've also joined a band that's already going, and it's so much easier getting into a band that's already established, obviously, as opposed to just getting everything off the ground, everybody together and everything else. But in those early days, what were some of the shows that y'all were playing, or were there any like ridiculous ones, perhaps?
Well, we always love playing the Windmill in London,
Yeah.
which is South London. It's in, I think it's quite near Brixton. We had some really good friends there that did some cool shows, but they were always fairly raucous, always fairly sort of out there. And at that time, we're a very boring band now, and we read a lot of books and things like that, and we don't necessarily drink. But at that point, we enjoyed something called Buckfast, which is this made by monks in Plymouth or near Plymouth in England, Benedictine monks.
Okay.
And it has a tonic wine that has a lot of caffeine in it. It's not very tasty, but its effects are profound.
Tonic wine, you said?
Yeah, and we had a lot of good times doing that and just having, a lot of fun and being with our friends and, like crowd surfing and stuff like that. And it was great fun. And I think at that point, it was a great underground scene, great people that were organizing it, who are still great people. Yeah, so I would think of these times as quite fondly as the early sort of markers of the band.
Right. And nobody gets motion sickness reading in a van?
I think you get better at it the more you do it. So I think it was America that did that to me,
Oh, the long drives?
I would have gotten motion sickness in the UK because, the longest drive we'll do here would be like 6 hours.
Right.
But I think I remember going from San Francisco to Portland.
Oh.
I think over 2 days actually.
Yeah.
Just reading it away. Yeah, no bother. Eventually you just become like, I guess like a sailor or something. You just the feeling goes,
Yeah.
It's more normal when you're stationary in a sort of house or whatever. That's when the floor starts moving.
Right. Nice. You mentioned earlier, like the sort of therapeutic nature of playing drums. I would imagine that most people, or most drummers rather, seem to have like a fairly high energy level, and that sort of cathartic release of both beating things and beating things in a tonal, semi-tonal fashion is certainly therapeutic. But I suppose, what age did you even sort of, did the drums attract you to them?
It would be 13, 14
Yeah.
age. So a couple of things. I mean, I had a very good school that I went to, and they had like drum kits there and stuff. And I was
Nice.
encouraged. But like I was also listening to like Sepultura and, what would it be, like mid-90s, like Rage Against the Machine,
Sure.
all sorts of different bands. But I think, bands that had good drummers
Right.
and stuff that I could put the cans on and play along to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember trying to learn Chaos AD like from
Right.
start to finish.
Yeah.
But that second track territory, I was like, what is happening with that tom? Like it drove me mad for about 6 months, but eventually I got it. Things like that, I would sort of sit down obsessively and play because I loved the music really.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like playing in the school metal band as well. I always remember our teacher begged us not to play "Rape Me" by
Nirvana?
And we said, well, you obviously don't get the premise of this song, you know.
Uh-huh.
But he begged us not to do it, but we did it anyway, and we thought we were all really, sort of
Rebellious.
rebels and stuff, but
Yeah.
we weren't really. Maybe we were, I don't know. But
Yeah.
we had a cigarette in the toilet beforehand before we did that,
Oh,
and
there you go.
that was a laugh. So yeah, it's things like that. I always felt like I wasn't like a normal kid
Mm-hmm.
at school, always hanging out with the weird people, and that hasn't really stopped or changed
Right.
since.
You mentioned pursuing academics. What did you go back to school for?
Well, I do sort of like sociology of work and employment, so I look at like people's livelihoods and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And I've done some research into like creative work and things. I'm very interested in the idea that work is a vocation
Yeah, yeah.
rather than something you do for money, So
Right.
I like to talk about that and write about that. But yeah, it's just a way to keep myself stimulated and interested in the world, and hopefully make a contribution that somebody can use, or is useful in some way socially.
Right. What did your parents do?
My dad was an educational advisor
Okay.
in religious education, believe it or not. So that's like at one point it was basically Christian studies, but he was involved in changing that to a more sort of world view on religion.
Interesting.
So that was cool. And my mum was a special eds teacher, so she was special education in our part of the world is, like for people with learning
Yep.
difficulties and various disabilities. So that was what my mum did. So it's a very kind of, I don't know, educational
Definitely.
household.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's probably why I've ended up doing what I'm
Yeah, yeah. The apple did not fall far from the tree, as we say here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I've got two brothers, one who lives in Tokyo,
Wow.
and one who lives in Newcastle.
Oh, okay. Do either of them play music?
Well, my oldest brother, he was in bands when I was younger. He was a bit of an inspiration, really.
Okay.
He used to like listen to Joy Division and the Swans next door, and was just always very interested in what that was. He was a bit of a reclusive brother, although you would hate if he heard me say that. But he just basically shut his room off and put on his records and his leather jacket and just like sort of looked miserable all day.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was really cool. I thought this is how you're meant to live your life, because he's obviously
Right.
your older brother. So
I mean, listening to the Joy Division and the Swans all day would probably make you slightly depressed, I would imagine.
yeah. Well, we were living in Scotland, which is kind of it's got that sensibility about it, especially in the winter. There's very little light about, and I've got this theory that the further north you go in Europe, and the more alcohol is involved, and the more heavy metal is involved.
I could see that for sure.
And it correlates exactly to like the amount of light that's around the place.
I mean, yeah, right. I mean, the some of the darkest music, like the Norwegian black metal and all the stuff that comes out of that area, that would make sense. And I mean, it's a cold, dark place for the most part, as far as I know. So I mean,
Yeah, it's the two extremes really. It goes from like extreme darkness to, it doesn't get dark until 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
oh God,
So both extremes really, depending on the season. It's very moody is the word.
totally. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't draw the same correlation with it being absolutely freezing, but Seattle, Washington is a notorious place, obviously, for a lot of music that came out. A lot of people that had pretty tragic things happen to them, whether it's, anybody from Chris Cornell to Kurt Cobain and a lot of people in between. But so much music came out with that at times could be pretty dark. And I mean, you have to draw that correlation between both possibly some level of chemical dependence and writing dark, moody music. I mean, I think that's your environment. That's what gets filtered out,
Yeah. No, I think it's true. I think there is something in that. I do actually think so. But it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because it's like, I guess music comes from like dealing with adversity, really, and generally that's where the best stuff comes from. It's like
Yeah,
people suffering and things, for want of a better word.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, here we are talking about the blues. What would the blues be without the suffering? That's the unfortunate aspect of it, but thankfully it reared something that ended up changing the course of musical history.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Well, here we are, relatively new year, still January when we're having this conversation. What's on the table for this new year in which we find ourselves?
Well, with the band, we're going back to the States in February. So
Awesome.
that's not long away. That's February 19th, I believe. So we're heading out to LA, then going across to Chicago, Detroit, Toronto, somewhere else.
Okay. How long is that run?
That run it's a short run of 6 gigs. But we will be back, I believe, to the States at another point, which shall be revealed in 2024 as well.
Awesome. I'll have to keep my eyes on it. Hopefully you'll come in the direction of Georgia or this sort of southern southeast area.
Yeah, definitely. I really hope so, and it would be lovely to do that.
Awesome, man. Well, man, it was fun talking to you. I appreciate the time. Dig the band, dig the most recent record. I'm glad you're back in the fold. It sounds like you're happy and back in the mix, back in the saddle, as Aerosmith said. But yeah, man, best of luck in this new year, dude.
Great, man. Thank you so much. You take it easy, Jody. Lovely to meet you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Ewan for catching up, and be on the lookout for them in February in the States. Hope y'all enjoyed the episode, and we'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.